Hello everybody, welcome to the end of another day of the Legends of Novus Kickstarter campaign. Today I wanted to tell you a little bit about some of the analytics. I know yesterday we shared some of the countries that the game is funded from, and that's following traditional patterns where most of the backers are from the United States and then followed by Canada and UK. So that was exciting to see, but what I did want to share with you is that even though there's just 250 backers right now, which is about half as much as I'd like, we are seeing quite a few people interested in the campaign and maybe just aren't ready to get their feet in the water yet. So believe it or not, there's over 1,650 people that have decided to follow the campaign. And for those of you that aren't familiar with Kickstarter, what that will mean is that they've opted in for reminders that they'll get in the last 2 to 3 days of the Kickstarter. So they're going to get an automatic notification on email in Kickstarter to let them know that Legends of Novus will be coming to an end. And that tends to have a last minute interest and an upkeep or a pickup in the curve of who's going to back the game in the end. So who knows what that could do at the end. As I've mentioned before, we are going to hold this out right to the end, even though we're only at about 38% funding right now. There's still plenty of time left and opportunity for people to learn about Legends of Novus. And I'll continue to talk to people in the industry, whether it's people that do blogs or websites or podcasts or have giant Facebook groups or different followings and game groups. I'll keep working on that. It is tough as a new developer to try to sell or share your game with somebody because there's so much out there and there's so much good things out there that it's hard to believe that something new could be just as good. But I believe Legends of Novus could be just as good as some of the games that you're playing on your table right now. What we want to talk about today, though, is a little bit about the art book. So the artist Andrea Butera and the location artist Boris Turano have done some fantastic art for Legends of Novus, and I'm going to have some of that scroll through our discussion as I talk here and explain some of those art pieces. But what I did want to share with you is the potential of what an art book can look like. So what I have here is an example from Magic the Gathering. This was back from the Innistrad block. And what they do is something very similar to what we're looking at. And the reason I don't want to show you anything for Legends of Novus yet is, although a lot of the art is already developed, we don't want to present to you an art book that is not in the style that we have decided to finish. So instead of presenting you an unfinished booklet that you may be deciding to purchase or not, it's better to show you what a finished product looks like and what Legends of Novus could look like. So when you look at the Magic the Gathering book, for example, sometimes they will use overlays with small text and partial images, or they'll use full image within the pages. And the art can be in different formats. You can have entire page art that spreads out, or you might have different pieces where it's just a top and bottom of the card. So don't want to give you a format that we're not ready to present yet, but just wanted to share with you kind of the idea that we have behind it, where within the booklet there's going to be many different things that will be presented, and that will include the history of Novus. So when I've talked about in the before, the maelstrom that really created the island continent that is what the world is known as today as Novus. Those were all pieces of separate continents that got merged into one, and the art book and storybook will tell a little bit of the history of that. In addition, it's going to tell you about the current locations. So with the art from Boris Turano, such as the Druidic or the Elven-built city of Vey, so we'll flash that across the screen. The city of Vey built within the trees and then taken over and populated by humans after the elven race was all but annihilated. And that's why you don't see elves in Novus, by the way. We'll talk a bit about that in the art and storybook. Or if you look at the religious city of Braille, that's a beautiful piece that Boris put together with the great cathedral-like city and the flowing river that goes through it. I think that'll be an awesome piece to talk about in the art book. Or if you go kind of to the northern part where you see Exire, the Molten City, and north of that is the demonic Temple of Sick. So all of these places are going to be great to go discuss in a little bit greater detail, but also rather than having the art in small format that you'll get in the game, you're going to get it in its full-blown majesty, kind of like you can see on the website. You'll see that in a book, a softcover book like this. This one is a hardcover, but for cost and shipping sake, it makes more sense to go with softcover. The other thing you'll get is the full character bios. So instead of just a blurb on the back of a card, you will get a full page image of that beautiful artwork of Cain and of Vin and of Davra and Chandril and of, sorry, the name's not striking me, Beric, the druid. You'll get each of these beautiful art characters blown up into a larger page, and you'll get the full history of them. So you can see some of the art that I'm putting on the screen now. When you see it on the character cards, it is nice to see, but you don't see the level of detail that Andrea painstakingly put into, and I think the art book really shows that off, as well as gives more room for elaboration on the story, which you can't really do in a board game unless you are doing a full-blown campaign, which is not the intent of the game. The other thing it'll talk about is the quest creatures. So I think when it comes to the art book, I'll try to come up with another term that maybe the residents of Novus use. I haven't thought of the right word that I want to describe them yet. Quest creatures is not something that somebody that lives in that world would actually refer to them as, whether they're monstrosities or terrific creatures or the horrors of the world. I'll think of something that I think will really stick. But the important part is that the beautiful art that you've seen of these creatures, whether it's the mighty Asmakai, see some of how amazing that is with his crystal shards, and the auras of energy that he has around him, or whether it's the sea hydra, Osira. How did that become such a massive, gigantic creature? If you've looked at the art for that piece, really to put it into scale, you have to look at the ship that's right in the center of that picture. Andrea did a terrific job of really showing the immensity of Osira by putting that ship in the center of it. And if you haven't looked at that yet, take a look. It's pretty cool. Or if you go to look at the Claw of Kadar, Monsignius was brought into the realm through the Maelstrom as well. Before that, there was no such thing as dragons in Novus. So Monsignius's art will be shown in all its glory, but also the story of maybe a little bit of his world before he came to Novus and how he's reacted to being transported into this dragonless world, and how it makes him as a dragon feel. Dragons have feelings, believe it or not. All right, we'll talk a little bit about the magic and how magic grew in Novus. So prior to the Maelstrom, there was not much to be had at all of magic, and little inklings here and there, but really the Maelstrom brought that to life, and it's allowed people to develop into wizards and discover what religion with power means as opposed to religion with faith, or the druidic powers of Beric to become befriend animals. Like those type of things did not happen before the Maelstrom came. They had their belief systems and their pursuits, but never to the extent that the Maelstrom brought. So it really created a new way of life for the entire what is now the one continent of Novus. And then the races of Novus we'll talk about in the book as well. So if you've looked at the images within the game, you'll notice that it's primarily populated by humans, because within the history of Novus, most of the other races were eradicated. There you will see some discussion of it about if any of those races could go back. Perhaps there's something in hiding, and we'll just try to share what we can within that storybook. And as the storybook and art book gets put to rest and built and created, bits of that will be shared on the website as well. Just when it's in its book format, it's all there in one spot. You don't have to sift through pages and click on links to get to that type of stuff. It's all there for you to look at and read. So if you have any interest at all in beautiful artwork when it comes to fantasy settings with the Legends of Novus, then by all means try getting that art book, and we'll make sure we put that together as beautifully and artistically as we can, with plenty of story and background information about the game. But if you just want to get the core game, I mean, that is you're going to get all the art within there as well. All that beautiful art. It'll just be a bit more compressed in size, so you may not see the glory that it truly is. And I really want to thank Andrea for the time and energy that he's put into Novus so far. All right, so that is the Art Book of Novus. Like I said, today we're sitting at 250 backers. Going into Sunday, probably not going to see a lot of activity tomorrow. People have things that they're doing on the weekends. Probably not trolling Facebook looking for ads or looking at links to Kickstarters. But come Monday, I think we're going to see a bit more activity as the game gets demoed at Gamma, as the flyers get handed out there, as people get back to work, and then on their breaks, they tend to, well, maybe not even on their breaks, but they tend to troll through and have a look at what's happening on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. And trust me, Novus is all over the place in those areas, plus Board Game Geek, of course. So we'll see some more activity next week, and maybe by the end of next week we can get to over 300 backers, and then we'll be going into that the last 3 days as of next weekend, and that's where you really see that uptick in terms of the graphs. If you've looked at KickTrack graphs or Kickstarter graphs, that'll show you that it goes from a real peak at the beginning, curves way down low in the middle, and then starts to curve back up near the end. And so we're anticipating that. And again, trust me, we have thought about the potential of this game not funding. I mean, sitting at 38% right now doesn't sound like the best place to be. Normally you should be well over 60-65% by now, if not 100% funded. So I'm not ignoring that fact. I truly know how these patterns of Kickstarters go, and was anticipating to be a little bit higher by now. But as this being only my second game and no full history or interactions with gamers beyond a couple of local things, I can see why there might not be a lot of trust in the game that I'm trying to create in the Legends of Novus. But maybe through your word of mouth, through my continued sharing, through the Gamma, through the podcasts, as people start to download and listen to them, there's a couple more airing, that will all help, and we'll see how many more people we can get interested. And if we do end up having to relaunch, just waiting till the very end before deciding if we're going to cancel or not will help us, should we relaunch, to have more backers. So all right, a little bit longer today, and but really wanted to tell you about the art book and about where my head is at and where Fundamental Games is thinking Legends of Novus will end up. And no matter how it ends, it's going to be in a good place, because we're going to find a way to relaunch if the next week doesn't go as I feel it could go. So thank you for listening. Thank you for the new backers that came today. We got a little bit of activity today, so that was awesome. And thanks for those of you who continue to stick around from day 1 or from day 2 or from day 7. A few of you have been around a while and watching some of these different videos, and appreciate that you spend time listening to my jibber jabber and where my mind is going with Legends of Novus.